You're listening to 4ZZZ. This is EcoRadio. On the line, we have Women's Health Doctor Kamala Emanuel from the Socialist Alliance, running as a Senate candidate here in Queensland. Kamala, thanks for joining us.
Hi, g'day. Lovely to talk to you, Dave.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's start off. This is an environment show. What do you see as the biggest threat to our environment here in Australia or the world? Actually,
yeah, I actually think the biggest threat is capitalism. It's the system of corporate greed that we're all stuck in, as that drives every other environmental crisis you can think of, pretty much. So whether you're talking about the climate crisis, the state of the soils, the state of air pollution, the nitrogen flows, the phosphorus flows, more or less you name it. And if you dig, usually you don't have to dig very far. You'll find someone making $1, making billions usually, from some form of pollution, some form of basically extracting value out of the earth and not having to pay for it, not having to restore it after they've finished what they're doing. And those of us who aren't making the big decisions, we're just embedded in this thing. As a consumer, you can make a small number of choices. But it's all within the constraints of what are they producing and how. And I think if we don't change the political and economic framework everything's going on in, we're looking at that something really desperate.
Yeah. So that's opposing a capitalist, greed-centric view of the world. If you're elected as a senator, how will you fix that problem?
The thing is that throughout history, it's the ordinary people who, with our political movements, have shifted things. And so what I would do, and what any of us from the Socialist Alliance would do, if we had the resources and platform that Parliament gives, is use that to build the grassroots campaigns and movements that drive change. I actually think that ultimately we need to create a new kind of system of grassroots democracy where the decisions aren't being made by the corporations and by governments that basically rule for the corporations, but that in our communities, our neighbourhoods, workplaces, we're finding new ways of creating democracy where we make the decisions about the things that affect us. So what would I do in Parliament? Use the kind of, if you like, the megaphone that Parliament creates to amplify the demands of the grassroots movement. Use the resources that Parliament offers to publicise, how people can get involved in the grassroots campaigns. Push for legislation, vote for legislation, but that's, in my opinion, and the orientation that the Socialist Alliance has as a whole, it's not primarily the politicians voting in Parliament doing it for us, if you like. That's not primarily what drives change. I mean, we would certainly, we'd be voting for stronger, real meaningful action on climate change for one thing. 100% renewables within the next 5 years is the kind of ambitious goal we need if we are actually seriously going to turn the world's direction around as far as the climate catastrophe that we're already entered.
Yeah, that's very ambitious.
It is, and it's the thing is, if you, I don't know. I mean, I was involved in. I've been involved in climate action for a long time, and I remember in 2010 when Beyond Zero Emissions put out their very ambitious set of plans for how Australia could get to 100% renewable energy within a decade, and that was 2010. So if we'd used that decade instead of wasting it, we would have been closer to staying within our carbon budget. We've used up our carbon budget. The world has. I mean, it's really clear. We've kind of reached the point where we have lost species, we have lost ecosystems, we've lost millions of people because of greenhouse gas fueled climate catastrophes. So it's too late for some people, and it's too late for some ecosystems. It's too late for some species, but it's not too late to work really, really hard to turn around where we are. And I mean, without ambitious targets, without saying what the problem is, we're just going to keep putting it off to the never like that,
Yeah.
like the corporations and the governments that rule for them have been doing, since the Rio talks back in the late 80s, early 90s, whatever it was. They've been making these proclamations about, how serious it is and how much they're going to take it seriously, and almost no one's actually followed through on kind of the big things that needed to change.
Yeah, well, in saying all that, seeing how we blew through these, agreements and targets, do you still have hope that we can phase out?
My only hope is in people power. That is our only possible hope, because there is, the governments of the world have absolutely demonstrated that there's no number of people who are going to die that matters to them more than their profits. And I think there are so many ways we can see that, whether it's the fires and floods and famines and disasters that the climate crisis is fueling. That they haven't cared to stop extracting fossil fuels. So that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is look at Gaza. There's no number of dead Palestinians that they seem to be bothered by, if it means that they can keep their, support for Israel, their little bit of Europe in the Middle East, and their access to oil. So to me, there are so many ways it's crystal clear that the people who run society actually don't care about, the regular everyday human beings. They care more about profits than they do about anything else. And you can see it in the housing crisis. There are all sorts of ways that you can see it. So that's why my only hope is that we organise ourselves. We find one another, if you like. Because back in a decade ago, the Occupy movement popularised this idea that we're the 99%, and most of us want a world where we've got, neighbours and friends and community. Most of us don't want to live in a world of escalating poverty and climate crisis and wars. So if we organise ourselves, then maybe we can be more powerful than the corporations and their military might. Because when we stop, when we sit down, when we strike, when we walk off, when we occupy things, when we occupy space, we've got immense power. They've got a lot of violence on their side. They've got a lot of money on their side. They've got a lot of power in all the kind of awful ways that power is exercised. But we've got the power to create community with each other, and we've got the power to stop their system from working. So
yeah,
we I have hope. I think it's a mistake for us to kind of sugarcoat how dangerous a moment this is in world history. But I think but I don't think it's just pie in the sky to have hope. I actually think it's a genuine option. There's plenty to despair about. So if you want to despair, you can.
yes,
But
yes,
there is real reason that we can, whether it's in seeing people over decades, people have been good, regular, everyday people coming from all sorts of walks of life have been trying to do something about the climate crisis. And okay, we haven't turned everything around. Some people have done some amazing, beautiful initiatives. Like your previous guest, that kind of conversation about planting, revegetating forests with a 500-year plan. People are doing beautiful initiatives. It's just when the framework is destroying it all, we need to kind of bring all of those initiatives together, or kind of link up the different initiatives and link up a new way of making decisions that that centres the community instead of the corporations.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kamala Emanuel, for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. That was Dr. Kamala Emanuel, Senate candidate for the Socialist Alliance.